Okay, I'm going to start with the lining for this bag. This is one of my main lining pieces. I'm folding it short edge to create a center crease. And then I'm going to grab one of my other rectangles that I cut out of the waterproof canvas, and I'm going to fold this one long edge to create a center crease the other way. And then I'm going to take this piece, this is my zipper pocket piece, and I'm going to place it right sides down, right side against the right side of the lining piece, and match up those folds so that the zipper pocket is now centered in the lining. And you want this piece to be about 1 inch to 1.25 inches down from the top edge of the lining piece. And now I'm just going to measure about 1 inch down from the top of the lining piece, and I'm going to draw a line starting from 1/2 inch in from one side and going to about 1/2 inch in away from the other side of the zipper pocket piece. So one straight line starting 1/2 inch in and then going to 1/2 inch before you get to the other edge. Then I'm lowering my ruler 1/2 inch and drawing that same line underneath of that. And then I'm going to just connect those two lines to make a rectangle. Just going to stitch along the two long lines now, back stitching when you start and stop. Okay. And then starting. Okay. Okay, I have that. I'm going to cut in the center just to make a snip big enough to get in there, and cut down to one end, and I'm getting to about 1/2 inch to the end, and then that's when I'm going to go this way out to the corner and snip into the corner but not into the stitching. Get rid of this thread there. Okay, so it looks like that. And then snipping right up to that corner but not into the stitching. Like that. And now I'm just going to pull the zipper pocket all the way to the other side, all around, to create a window with no raw edges for the zipper. I've got my zipper behind the window now, making sure the pull is inside the window, and I'm just going to top stitch around the entire rectangle. Top stitch around.
that zipper pull in there. My goodness, Nicole. Okay. Top stitched around, fold it up. Okay. Trim my zipper a little bit because I cut it just a little long. Okay, so then you have this pocket, and I just cut.
Okay, now I'm just folding up the bottom edges, and I'm just going to stitch them that way on each side of the pocket so that it's easier for me to top stitch the pocket closed later at the end of the bag.
Okay. And now, bottom piece, right side against the right side of the fabric. Pin it. Oops. 1/2 inch seam allowance is what I'm using. And then I'm going to top stitch that down. Oh my gosh, here we go. Under the bottom piece. Okay. And then that's top stitched. And then we're going to do the other piece on the other side. Right sides together. Pin it in place. And with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. There we go. the seam under the bottom, and you're going to top stitch along the bottom. I'm just pulling this waterproof canvas as I go, since you can't press it like you would cotton to get it nice and flat for top stitching purposes. Okay. All right. Folding, you have your top stitched bottom here, you're folding your piece and finding the center and making a small snip right where that center is on both sides. I've already done it on this one. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing on your gusset pieces. You're going to fold them in half. Make a small snip. Where that center is. And then you're going to do one more thing. A very, very, very small, delicate, light snip into the corner of your squares at the bottom. Not much at all. Just a tiny little snip. Not a lot. Okay. Now you're going to take one of your gusset pieces and you're going to put it center to center, right sides down against the right side of the main body of the lining. And you're going to match up those center marks, those center snips, and pin there. And we're going to come in here and sew it just along like that center corner marking with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay. All right, so now it looks like this. You have sewn along the bottom of the gusset from one corner to the other, inside of one corner to the other. And now you're going to take your top corners and match them with the top corners of the main body of the lining. So top corner to top corner. Okay, and once the top corners are clipped into place, you can start going in and clipping the rest of this in place. And hopefully that little snip that you made into the corner of the gusset will help that sit nice and square and even in your bag. I'm hoping that's what's happening for mine. Okay, so matching up those side seams. And there we go. Okay, this is what it should look like now. And because you have those corners clipped out and snipped in a little bit, they bent pretty easily. You know, you should have a nice, easy fit. Now, just when you make those clips, just remember not to make them too big, because you're going to be sewing down and you want that snip mark that you did to be inside your seam allowance. Otherwise, you're going to have like a hole in the corner. So we're going to make sure when I sew down here that I catch that little clip that I made in the corner inside the seam allowance. Okay, here we go. 1/2 inch, or maybe a little more for the lining. It's up to you. Sometimes doing a little more helps it sit easier. And yeah. this way you only have to go as far as where you started sewing the bottom. So I'm going to lift up a little bit just so I can see what I'm doing here and see if I matched up the bottom yet. Oh my God, a little ways to go. This is a tough one to do small. So I'm coming in and I'm just gonna, here we go. Yeah, I went over my bottom seam there. Okay. Okay, I had to get more bobbin thread in there. Okay, so basically what we have so far is we sewed down from the top down to where we just overlap the stitching that we did at the bottom there. And now I'm just going to start here and come up, making sure I overlap the stitching down here. It requires a little bit of pushing and pulling the bag to get in there. Creasing the fabric a little bit, just make sure that the fabric isn't creased under your stitching, right? Because that's what you want to try to avoid. There we go. And now I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and laid out nice. There we go. Okay. This takes a little bit of practice. Got caught there. There we go. Okay. All right. So now I have my other stitching overlapping that bottom. Okay, I'm speeding this up again since it's the exact same process on the other side. So I found my center and I'm clipping the two centers together of the bottom and the side. I am sewing from the inside corner of one side to the other, and then I'm going to match up the corners at the top. And then after the corners at the top are matched, then I come down and match the sides together. And it is important to do that in that order so that everything is in place and that it's where it's supposed to be, like it lines up around the top for when you're sewing the zipper on and the bag together. Okay, it's all clipped up. I have the bottom sewn already, and now I just need to do the sides. So with my 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm going down one side. I'm sewing as far as I can till I reach the stitching that I did on the bottom and just going over it and back stitching. I did have to move this around a little bit to be able to reach it. And then I'm just going to start on the other side and sew up the top. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm starting where my stitching is at the bottom and overlapping it just so I don't leave any holes. And here's what it should look like. Just looks like you've sewn around the entire gusset. It's just kind of a little cheater method. And I'm just going to trim the seams a little bit and then snip a little bit into the seam allowance, not much, just enough to help it kind of be a little more flexible when I turn the lining right side out so that the seams sit nicer.
I'm going to turn the lining right side out now, both just to check it and see what it looks like, and also because the next time we use this lining, it will need to be turned right side out. So I'm just doing that now, pushing all the corners out. You might need to use like a chopstick or something to help poke the corners out. But when you're finished, you are finished with this section of the bag, and we're going to move on to the exterior of the bag in a different video. Okay, this is what it looks like, and I will see you in part 2.